Some top US retailers are completely united in calling on governors to make masks mandatory. 21 CEOs signed an open letter talking about what their employees have experienced, and part of it says, quote, "Unfortunately, many of these workers have recently endured verbal threats, harassment and, in some cases, physical violence for attempting to promote a safer environment for themselves and customers. More specifically, many have been subjected to senseless attacks simply because they requested a customer wear a mask upon entry." Marc Perrone is the international president of the United Food and Commercial Workers Union. He joins me now from Washington, and thanks so much for doing so. I actually wanted to start off with a national poll of your members that your union conducted. Some of the results are really eye-opening, if perhaps not surprising. I mean, half of the workers surveyed were more worried about COVID-19 than they were just 2 weeks ago. And this is an interesting one too, and again, not surprising, more than half of those surveyed worry about bringing the virus home. And then 3/4 believe an even worse second wave is coming. I just imagine, can't imagine what the stress levels are for these workers. Give us a sense of that.
Well, I think they're very concerned about bringing the virus home to their families. And many of these workers are living in generational homes. They may have their parents living with them, or certainly their children. And I think we all understand the concern that we would have if we brought some deadly virus home to our kids and it ultimately affected them. I think that it would be just almost unbearable.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, on the mask issue, I mean, this has been such a debate, a crazy one, really. But, you know, what sorts of issues have your members had when it comes to, you know, customers and staff? I mean, some of the social media videos of verbal, even physical abuse have been frightening. What are you hearing from your members?
Well, there has been verbal and actual physical abuse with some of my members. I think that they tried to be gentle with it, and some of the customers did not receive it well. I think it did become politicized, unfortunately, but I think that we all had to recognize that if we don't get our hands wrapped around this virus, that we can't reopen our economy. And if we can't reopen the economy, I think those people that are complaining about the masks are going to be complaining about the economy's not open. So you can't have it both ways. And we all believe, and we certainly know this, you don't go into a grocery store or any other retail operation anywhere unless you have clothes on. And so the mask is just an extension of a piece of clothing you might have to wear now in order to protect yourself and other people as well.
Some good analogies out there too. I mean, we used to smoke inside and now we do not, and everyone's okay with that. We have seen state governments, though, refuse to institute a mask mandate. I guess, are you heartened that retailers are moving ahead on their own, bringing their own wear a mask rule into effect, and a whole bunch of them as well? Does that help your position and that of your members?
Well, I think that this union was at the very forefront on the first day about mask mandates for our workers, but we had difficulties getting the PPE initially, mandates for the customers. And we received a lot of pushback from our employers. They were concerned that it was going to drive the customers away. Initially, they were concerned that the customers would feel as though that the workers were sick. Primarily because of what the CDC guidelines said initially. But as well as I can say is it took this long to get these companies to do this, and I think it was far too much. And I think there's a different level that we have to look at going forward. We have to look at hospital surgical suite grade air filtration systems in these units, because as we start to enclose ourselves, these units do in fact become, petri dishes of sorts, that the virus can be transmitted And there's certainly transmission points that take place inside packing houses as well as retail food stores, which is what our members do.
Yeah, a good point. I mean, one thing about this, many of your members are, of course, among the most vulnerable members of society when it comes to the virus, in particular, people of colour who the virus has disproportionately impacted. These are people who keep society ticking along in many ways. Do you feel that the risks your members take are appreciated?
I do believe that this pandemic has raised the awareness level of the public. I'm afraid, however, that some of the employers, when they started to see the unemployment levels rise, that is what triggered them to pull back on their bonus pays, the appreciation pay, the hero pay, all the different things they called it. I think that when the unemployment levels, when we had 45 million people that filed for unemployment, our employers started to step back away from that pay. So no, my members at this point in time do not feel appreciated, at least from their managers, for that reason, because they did pull back on that pay.
Yeah, well, if anyone should feel appreciated in this environment, it's these people, as a lot of people say. Your members are frontline workers as well. Marc Perrone, got to leave it there. Really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Michael, thank you so much for having us on, and we really appreciate the work that you're doing in order to get this message out there about safety during this pandemic. Thank you so much.